Hello, sir. My name is James Cozier, and I live in Darlington Township here in western Pennsylvania. That's in Beaver County. I know that we aren't really, I suppose, are we your constituents? I believe we are. I don't know. Look, Chris DeLugio, this is his district. And I want to tell you, sir, I recorded the intentional burning off of railroad containers that were carrying hazardous materials there on the Pennsylvania borders, containers in Pennsylvania, the 5th of February 2023. I sent it out to all the media, and they got back to the command center there, which was in East Palestine, where they were managing the illegal burn off, and where they reported on the disaster in safety. All the winds blew into Pennsylvania, onto Pennsylvanians, everything. There is a complete history on radar and satellite imagery, along with the evidence, not only of that day that I captured the burning off of containers in Pennsylvania, and the next day they did that massive illegal disposal of everything that was left there on the site of the derailment, which was on the Pennsylvania border, outside of East Palestine. You know where the derailment occurred, sir. You take a ride down Taggart Road there, alongside there, where the tracks run. You'll see the Pennsylvania-Ohio border. That's where it occurred. And you keep driving west, and then you'll see the sign, "Welcome to the village of East Palestine." It actually happened on the outskirts of East Palestine, and never was there any of that contamination that blew into East Palestine. It was all positioned there. And I captured the massive fallout in Pennsylvania. I captured it on time-stamped cellular video. And that would have been on the 6th at around 6 p.m. When I say around, because there were several videos that I captured. And in one of those videos, I captured WTAE Channel 4 Action News in the time-stamped cellular video of the fallout. They're sitting there. And they never reported on anything. They never gave warning to thousands of people that got dosed with those carcinogenic industrial chemicals to whatever degree. They did not give anyone an opportunity to even tape up their windows and doors to mitigate that contamination. And you might want to go ahead, I'm going to say it again, because I know that is really difficult, to comprehend. What I'm telling you is I captured the fallout, those massive chemical clouds that were dragging through Pennsylvania on the 6th of February 2023. I captured that. They were moving through at 2 to 3 miles per hour, sir. That's it. On the ground, dragging through. And I want to tell you, I was symptomatic for a month. I mean, severely so for nearly a week. Yeah, I mean, severely so. I'm talking the next morning after that. That would have been on the 7th. I had, diarrhea like I've never had before. I had a headache, one of those type of headache where you can't hardly move for several days. 3 days anyway, hardcore. I had a burning in my chest, a cough. I had a weakness, a fatigue in my body that all I could do was just to get out of bed. And when I would get out of bed, the smell here in the house, it changed from the smell the night of the burn off, which they called a controlled release. That night, on the 6th, it smelled like a sweet petro, which gave me an adrenaline hit, and it was like I knew it was bad, but I got caught up in it. I was out there recording that, and I was like, holy shit. I put it up on Twitter immediately. I uploaded everything. I'll get back to that in a moment, but the smell changed overnight. The next day it smelled like a strong nail polish smell, like a vat of nail polish had been dumped in the house here in Darlington. That's what it smelled like. And it was really bad. So I know that it was bad. I was symptomatic. I know. And I was trying to do everything I could, reaching out to authorities, everyone early on. I'm like, is there any way that somebody can, look to see if there's some type of protocol for these type of accidents, like where they manufacture these chemicals? Whereas whoever got ingested this here, massively, where there could be help given to them to mitigate whatever problems that they might have with those carcinogens. I don't know. Is there anything that can be done? Nobody got back to me, except that I was monitored, and I had two FBI agents that came out and talked to me. I wanted to talk to them more in detail about what the hell was going on. They just touched base with me because Joe Rogan, he had seen the video on TikTok. I didn't put it on TikTok. Someone screen grabbed my footage, and they uploaded it onto TikTok, and they labeled it Darlington, Ohio, sir. You see, to obfuscate, to keep Pennsylvania out of everyone's mouths. We're talking about right there on the borders where this all occurred, and they managed by using the media. I'm talking about Norfolk Southern and those multi-billion-dollar corporations that they work for, sir. They managed to supplant the whole narrative there in East Palestine. You go to East Palestine now, you'll see they've repaved many or most all of the main roads. They're all repaved, and they're getting all kinds of things done there. Norfolk Southern is treating that town with a lot of care. Where the actual contamination is and was and is. I mean, you drive through this area here, and you'll see there's pothole roads, and nothing. There was no attention given here. They purposely even have the court in northeastern Ohio carrying what Doug Mastriano. He went over there, sir, and he put his foot down in East Palestine, putting attention there. For the most part, I'm telling you, this is the truth. In Jesus' name, hear me now. He put his foot down over there, and he said it wasn't one container, it was 5. That's what he. And then everyone looks at him like, what a heroic thing to do. Well, sir, I'll tell you in truth. There is drone footage. There was a brave drone pilot that flew over the site, and you can count at least 34 containers in that flyover that were charred, that were part of the burn off. So the management of that burn off, and the Associated Press, they reported the day after the derailment, in the midst of the illegal burn off, because they did that for 3 days. They reported that Norfolk Southern told them that there were 14 tankers of vinyl chloride, and that there were 20 containers carrying hazardous materials labeled as such. There were 34 that Norfolk Southern fessed up to right from the beginning. I think there were more, because the Hill this year reported that there were 38 containers that were carrying hazardous materials. So that cocktail, it all went into Pennsylvania. And when I say I was talking about the radius, there's a settlement, the court in northeastern Ohio. You see, Doug Mastriano, he used his sacred public trust, which you have, sir. That's a sacred public trust you're in right now. When you took that oath, you took it before God. You took it before the living God, Yahweh. You took that oath. You were bound in oath before the living God. And he went over there. He went over there, sir, and he did that so that the court then carried what he said into the silencing lawsuit, silencing settlement, whatever you want to call it. It's a radius settlement. You see, the insidiousness with that, sir, is that people west of the derailment, the people that weren't even inconvenienced, are getting tens of thousands of dollars from Norfolk Southern. And what is it that they're getting paid for, sir? Because they're not going to fight for the 34 containers of contamination. They weren't contaminated with any of it, so hell, they're going to fight to keep that narrative from Norfolk Southern. Matter of fact, they have fought with me anytime I have gone public with this information. and any of them have heard that what I've just stated to you right now, where I've gotten kickback. Fuck that kickback, not kickback. I don't no kickback. I have no part of any of this. I have opted out of this silencing settlement, sir. I have no part of any of it. But I've gotten feedback, from folks over there threatening me, what have you. Even people, that have been here in Darlington. I've had several times people have been over here to intimidate me. Okay, well, it's people die for less than 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, $70,000. That's what the firemen there, they all got, because it's a radius settlement. The firemen who were told to not put out the fires when they arrived there that Friday night, the 3rd of February 2023, they were all told to not put out the fires. In essence, they were used as props so that the media could show the flashing lights and the fire trucks, and down at that low end there on the west side, they could show them maybe even with a cannon on from one of those trucks, and then people all over would look at it and say, "Look at that! Those fires are out of control." That's what they did, sir. That's what they did, sir. This is not, everything I've said to you is a 100% irrefutable truth. And I'll go further, I'll tell you this. When I sent that media out Sunday afternoon, when I sent that footage out to the media Sunday afternoon, I sent with them a note. I said, what if, this is to all the media, ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox, everyone, sir. I sent out the footage too of them intentionally burning off containers that afternoon, that Sunday afternoon. They even had a guy down there working for them with a caution vest on. No hazmat gear or anything. Just down there monitoring the burn. I captured all of that. I sent it out to the media with a note, and I said, what if... Can you turn that volume down on that, please? Norsiva, honey! Please turn that volume down. Honey! Yeah. Please turn the volume down on that. Yeah. Is that okay? That'll do. Thank you, just for a few minutes, okay? Appreciate it, babe. My wife, Norsiva, she's oblivious to all this shit. She don't understand, what it is, carcinogenic industrial chemicals. She don't understand the insidiousness of being contaminated with Agent Orange or these fucking highly carcinogenic industrial chemicals that thousands of people got dosed here with. She don't understand it. And I guess a lot of people don't know. They don't understand. And there's people that plain don't understand it either, sir. But getting back to what I sent out to the media, I sent a note with them, and I'm like, what if, one of those containers, and it's hot because they're burning them off, what if it empties out and then sucks oxygen into the tank, and it's a hot tank, and it explodes? I'm just thinking as just somebody that doesn't know anything. I'm ignorant, obviously, of what those containers can do, what they can be pushed, to what extent. I mean, Norfolk Southern and their accomplices, those people that they were hauling for, those chemical companies, they know. They all know. So they went ahead, Governor DeWine, he declares a false state of emergency 2 hours after I sent that footage out Sunday afternoon, the 5th of February. He declares a false state of emergency. Okay, I'm a 2-branch veteran. Hey, look, I was mission essential. At the time that I served honorably with distinction. So, I'm telling you, I'm offended that Governor DeWine, that those people over there, the authorities, they then activated our Army National Guard to stand as sentry, to keep people out of there from being able to capture what they did then. You see, they went in there. So then when nobody had the cameras on them, though I was told when I went on a podcast, and the Mayor Trent over there, he came on the podcast and said there was a poll cam. He fucked up, and I said, well, why don't you go ahead and have that footage published? Everyone, I'm sure there's people that would like to see that. But then he retracted what he said on that podcast. But you see, Governor DeWine declared a false state of emergency. He activated our Army National Guard to stand as sentry, to keep people out. I don't know how else to put it. He used them to commit a crime against our citizenry. You see, because then they went in there and they put out the fires that they said they could get nowhere near. Truth, they had to, sir, because they then dug out trenches along the tracks in at least 2 places. Huge trenches where they then pumped out of the containers what was left into those trenches. That's what you saw Monday evening, Monday afternoon actually, when they lit that shit up the next day, That's what you saw. So, in the beginning they said it was 1 container. They called it a controlled release. They called it a success. I'm quoting them. Controlled release. See, hence 1 container they were talking about that they said that they had to let pressure off of. That's a lie that Governor DeWine told everyone. That's what he did with his authority. And then they went in there and they made preparations for the massive illegal disposal of everything that was left on the site. And you see, they didn't contact enough experts. Even though Sil Sagano, the Honorable Sil Sagano, a fire chief from Youngstown, he went on Channel 27 Youngstown Sunday evening. This is right at the time that Governor DeWine declared the false state of emergency, declared our National Guard to keep people out from capturing anything about their preparations they had to make, to do that massive cleanup, illegal cleanup. I say illegal because, all that stuff could have been offloaded, sir. We have special incinerators that can handle, they're actually, I was told there's at least 2 of them that are not far. It actually is 1 in Ohio, I was told. They could have gone ahead and nullified those properties of those hazardous materials. That's what they're for. Special incinerators, filtration systems to deal with this type of a situation. But instead, they determined to just burn it off, which is probably what they do. They have done for years. That's why they had a team that came in, special contractors from out of state. So you have to, I don't know if you've got any relatives, any people that hear that you give a shit about. I'm going to be real about it. I don't know if you have any skin in this situation. And it helps if you had some skin in it. If you had somebody you loved over here, preferably somebody you really had a heart for, that got dosed with these carcinogens. That would put things in a perspective that you really need. The perspective that no one is showing any concern for. Even under that, people here, Chris DeLugio, maybe he has family, friends here, but all he's looking for is to see what Norfolk Southern and those multi-billion-dollar corporations, what they can do for him. And you see now, he's featured on, whatever positive, programming now, and he even has WTAE as his personal press release. So does Governor Shapiro. Governor Shapiro, I contacted him. I gave him all of this irrefutable evidence, all of the video evidence. We're talking about having WTAE there during the fallout. I have that capture. I sent it to him. That alone should have had, that piece of evidence alone with the fallout there should have been enough that this whole thing, should have been excoriated. There should have been what? You tell me. I don't have the professional vernacular, or what have you, vocational speak, to say it the way I should. Would it have been a criminal like grand jury, or what? To get things rolling, and then you have the depositions What? People are indicted. People are prosecuted. People are held accountable. None of that is done. None of that's been done. As a matter of fact, there is no one that has even courage enough to say the word illegal or criminal. There is no one that has courage enough to say criminal or illegal. So having somebody here, if you had somebody here, if your children would have been out of your grandchildren, we're the same age, you and I. That's right. We're only 2 months apart. You were you know what? August of '65. I am October of '65. So we're a couple months apart, sir. You're a couple months older than me. That's it. So I think we can relate to one another. We can relate. If you had children, grandchildren here, I couldn't have any grandchildren or children because of my injuries that happened by no fault of my own in service honorably with distinction to our nation. So that's my lot. But you surely can relate to what, because I can. My wife had 2 girls, and they, I was a paternal figure with them and their children, and now their children. So I know that if any one of them would have been out waiting for the bus the next morning, which there were, everyone in Lawrence and Beaver County, the kids were out waiting for the bus the next morning. Those particles, they were coating everything, so they ingested them. Everyone went about their lives, like everyone. Think about it. My parents are gone, but if they'd have been out, they weren't much for, going for walks and bike rides, or, working class, real working class, my family. And the notion of such things, is just not anything that ever could be exercised. But there are couples that I'm sure were getting out and doing things the next day oblivious. Everyone was oblivious. Everyone needs an authority, don't they, sir, to tell them. Just like when I was a kid, I knew, I saw my parents, they both smoked, and my grandpa died of lung cancer. And I'm like, man, this fucking smoking. I was just a kid. I'm talking like a kid. I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years old, whatever it was. I told my cousin, I'm like, man, this fucking smoking is bad. Look what it's doing. Look at my mom and dad and my grandpa, and my cousin said, oh, nobody said it's bad, so it must not be bad. I'm like, what? I said, even then, I recognize what you need somebody to tell you it's bad. But we do. That's how we are. That whatever that is, that phenomenon is, in sociological terms, I don't know. That type of whatever the hell it is, that approval, that authority, that credentialed authority that can speak to a situation. And it's like you having your wife, you're telling your wife, hey, you need to do this or that, and then it takes someone with like a degree, a medical degree, to tell her to eat right, to exercise, or whatever it is. Everyone needs a goddamn authority, which is disgusting, but that's the way things are. Not everybody, but most everyone. And the Surgeon General, at that time when I was a kid, then, packs were printed with a warning from the Surgeon General about smoking was hazardous to your health. Then people were like, oh, it's bad for you. Well, hell, when you can look around and you see everyone fucking hacking and fucking sick, and people dying of lung cancer, and they smoked, and fucking, it was obvious. And here, with this insidious contamination, it's not so obvious, though, is it? But if you know anyone that died, my uncle died from exposure to Agent Orange. Yeah, just one exposure that he had, at least one major one, was it? They flew into an area in Vietnam that had been coated, to defoliage the area, around the landing strip. And he got dosed heavy, and that shit manifested, in really, like, the worst fucking bone cancer. He suffered so bad. Took years to manifest, as a lot of these carcinogens do. can do. Take years. But, yeah. I did have Governor Shapiro's ear. It should have been a Pennsylvania disaster. He should have taken jurisdiction, because that, should have never have been something handled by Ohio authorities. It should have been Pennsylvania authorities. Chris DeLugio, he's got his, those multi-billion-dollar corporations are helping him, with him eyeballing higher office. You can see that with him grandstanding whatever there with Bernie Sanders, and being part of this other group that is acting defiant, to President Trump, how they're talking, all of this bullshit, like that they are such crusaders against corporate corruption. And what do you see? And even our veterans. I asked him for help, as a disabled veteran, and I can't even get an answer back from him. Every platform he has, every way that I could get a hold of him, I tried. I sent him out all this irrefutable evidence with, the videos and what have you, all of it. And, he doesn't even have the decency. As a man, he does not even have the courage, does not have the decency to even give me a phone call. He could say, Mr. Kosher, I saw the video you sent out to me. What do you think? What? He didn't want fucking nothing. Just like Joe Rogan, too. Joe Rogan, he didn't ask my permission. He had that footage on his podcast. Just my reaction initially. Not he. Of course, Joe held back the footage of WTAE, because what was Joe doing? Joe is a smart guy. I don't underestimate his intelligence. He was waiting to see what those corporations, what they do for him. He may be a multimillionaire, but from my experience, from the people I've known that have had money, they all want to make more money. It's never enough. So Joe Rogan having holding back the evidence of the fallout here in Pennsylvania, and WTAE, Channel 4 Action News, sitting there on timestamp video. He has all of that. He had all of that. He didn't show any of that. He didn't consult me to show the footage that I captured. He never asked my permission. Most importantly, he didn't consult me. So he was waiting to see what those corporations would give him. And I think I don't know. I know you're a smart guy. Did you see how he was rewarded for that? I mean, just having his ego stroked, let alone we don't know what kind of insider information he's got on investments and what have you going forward. Just like Chris DeLugio, he's featured on some of the, he was just on some program, I don't watch any of that bullshit, so much of the propaganda fucking programming. But it was on some major network being covering, anyway, I think you know what I'm talking about. I don't have to be specific about it. Are you aware? Are you aware of the favor now you see Chris DeLugio getting from these multi-billion-dollar corporations? Are you aware? Do you see it? Do you see Governor Shapiro was given a shot, a consideration for the VP pick in the Harris administration because he kept his fucking mouth shut? Where I was begging him to do the right thing. The man was ordained for that position. Ordained of God for that position, for that time. That was his opportunity. That was the big opportunity he was given in his life. It was right then and there to excoriate what it was that was done. To represent, to defend these people here in Pennsylvania that were contaminated. So what did he do? He gave, he received publicly a soft bribe of $7 million from Norfolk Southern to give out to those first responders, those first responders who stood there with their arms crossed, right to the west of the derailment, out of harm's way. They're not going to stand in the contamination. They stood there for their photo ops, as being used as props to supplant that lying narrative of East Palestine. So everyone, anytime they hear East Palestine, they're like, oh, those poor people of East Palestine. Those poor people. You check into it, you'll see that each and every one of those firemen, I believe they fast-tracked their money. $70,000, I heard they all got a piece. Governor Shapiro, those rewards are unfolding. Him deciding to not do anything. He saw the video of WTAE sitting there under the fallout. I captured everything. It was time-stamped cellular video. He saw that massive contamination. I had his ear, sir. I had his ear. He was hanging on every word there for a minute, because he didn't know what kind of traction I would have if I would have, outed the whole situation. He didn't know. Who knows? But I was monitored at the time, and no matter what bad things you might, or I don't know how you feel. It doesn't matter. I'm not a party guy. I don't really give a shit about Republican, Democrat, whatever. I'm on issues if I'm on anything, but in Christ, there's a whole different lens that you look through anyway. And Jesus said he had nothing to do with this world. And there are no politics in heaven, Senator. There are no politics in heaven. There are no politicians. Meaning, you could be saved in Christ. And I don't know where. Nobody knowing. No one knows what God has in store for them. Those that love God, we're told we can't imagine it, so I don't try. If I'm told I can't imagine, and I'm not going to try, but God is not into politics. There's no political infighting in heaven. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's what we're praying for every time with the Lord's Prayer. We're asking for that heavenly kingdom, that government here on earth as it is in heaven, sir. So, that being said, good Lord, so much, isn't it? So much corruption. And, it's, I tried. The Biden administration, yes, I wanted to mention that. The one thing that they did that I thought was really courageous, honorable, they saw the video I captured. And then I heard on, they had the, through their administration, they mentioned Darlington Township. It's like there was like a speaking to, me even, and here where the fallout was recorded, that they were aware of everything going on. And then I was being monitored by the feds too. And I was asked where I thought the contamination went to. Of course, you could see it all on radar imagery, and I think that they didn't want, to, make those corporations think in the beginning that they were investigating it because they need their backing, as would they needed their help, for another administration, whether it would have been a Biden or a Harris administration. One is the same, but they asked me, would you believe this is the truth? Where do you think, it went to? And I told them, I said it was really bad here in Beaver, from the night of the derailment fires. If you know anything about this area, it went all the way down to Rochester, Aliquippa. You can see it on radar, man. And when it falls out, that's what I was trying to let you know. The Honorable Sil Sagano, a fire chief from the Youngstown Fire Department, he's a hazardous material specialist. He went on Channel 27 News, and he told them, he said, this shit is bad. He said the chemicals have properties by which they're going to attract. They're their properties. What they are, they attract water molecules when they are, in an uncontrolled, because that was an uncontrolled burn. You don't do that. We have special facilities, like I said, to nullify those hazardous properties. He said that they would collect water molecules and then would fall out. And he addressed how dangerous those particles were. And he did that right before they did the massive burn-off. why I said that is, they went ahead and did it, but Sil Sagano, he went out on channel. He was interviewed by Tucker Carlson, and there were a couple other people that had courage enough, to even listen to him. But even with Sil Sagano, he didn't realize that, or did he? He didn't address the fallout, being all here in Pennsylvania. He didn't know that. I mean, even though there's all that radar, evidence, and really radar, when you see it fall off from the radar, when it disappears, it's because it has fallen out. It's gone. It's on the ground. That's what happened, sir. It didn't go up into the atmosphere and disperse like they had hoped. That the properties of the chemicals kept it down low, and then it fell out. It got heavy and it fell out, and they knew by what Sil Sagano had said to them that was what was going to happen, and they said fuck it, and they did it anyway. Like he didn't know what he was talking about, or they just didn't give a fuck, or they were prepared to keep Pennsylvania out of everyone's mouth. I'm talking about using the media to make sure that not one report mentions the fallout. When I tell you, you can go out there. If ever you have a chance to if you have a day off, you can drive down Taggart Road and look at where the derailment and those massive fires of, burning off of at least 34 railroad containers that were carrying hazardous materials. At least 34. When you can drive down the road and you can see where it is, you can see that it was entirely a Pennsylvania disaster. Entirely. Governor Shapiro, he's waiting to see how they're going to help him, and Chris DeLugio, and you saw Mayor Trent. He was a keynote speaker at the Republican convention. And DeWine, he's keeping out of the corruption, charges, what it is that he's involved in, other things, by what it is that he's done for these corporations. They have such power, such sway over local, state, and federal authorities. Again, I'm sorry. But you see, Biden, he saw the footage. When I say he saw the footage, his people saw the footage, his administration. And I would guess that he did see what the hell happened here, because he then defied those corporations. And they came out, the Biden administration, and they stated that the contamination, they understood that it was here in Darlington Township in Beaver County. How far they went with their statements, I'm not sure, but I was asked and I told them, Beaver and Lawrence County. I believe that is something that they actually, have on record, that they knew that the contamination was here in Beaver and Lawrence County. I mean, that's a big one, because those corporations, what they viewed that as a betrayal, really, and which is why they put their muscle behind a Trump administration. As much as good things, and much favor as you'd like, to have as well, I understand from, the Trump administration, and I understand that. I'm gonna let you know I understand that. But the Trump administration is a deregulation administration. Though it had nothing to do with the burning off of and hiding of all of that contamination. No, they didn't have anything to do with that. But, sir, you being a consummate politician now, did you recognize that J.D. Vance, when he went over there and put his public trust, when he went over there and put his foot down in a stream in East Palestine, and he helped to supplant the narrative that that's where the disaster was, when all of the radar and satellite imagery irrefutably shows that it was Pennsylvania that got all of the contamination, all of the winds blew to the east throughout that whole time, from the derailment all the way through the massive burn-off. 3 days. In 3 days' time, you can see all of the radar evidence is Pennsylvania got the contamination. But J.D. Vance, I'm sure he's got regret. He went over there and, those all of those multi-billion-dollar corporations are watching, and he's got the public, he got the spotlight. The media were covering him. He goes over there, and pretty much you can say he stood in a stream in East Palestine and put his hands up and said, "Here I am. Look at me," showing those multi-billion-dollar corporations. I'm not just about telling you that I will do whatever you need done, but I will do it. Those weren't his constituents. He went out of his way to go over there and stand over there in East Palestine and put attention there to use his oath of office, his sacred public trust, to help supplant their lying, insidious narrative of East Palestine. He never corrected himself. He had every opportunity to even come in and say, all of the radar evidence, it shows irrefutably that Pennsylvania got all of that contamination. It happened on the border. It happened right there, on the border, Ohio border, and all the winds were blowing to the east onto Pennsylvanians. He never did that. But he stuck with that. He stuck with that to show those corporations. I mean, what a Machiavellian move that is, right? He's a smart guy. He is smart. If he'd use that intelligence for, with honor, be guided with principles, decency, integrity, honorability, honoring that oath of office, imagine what he could do. But he used that to show the corporations that he would do whatever they want, and you see where he is now. And you can have a personal discussion with President Trump. You could ask him, who was it that wanted J.D. Vance as vice president? J.D. Vance was not a supporter of President Trump. As a matter of fact, you can hear him say that he was the antithesis of a supporter of Trump. He would have been the last person, I believe, that one of the last people that our president would have chosen for vice president, to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. What was that, like an insurance policy for those multi-billion-dollar corporations? If anything were to happen to our president, then they have somebody in there that's going to be their puppet, complete, has proven himself to be subservient to them. True. What I said is true. So, the corruption. So I wanted to tell you that all of this, I shared every bit of the evidence with everyone that I could, all the way from, here locally. There was even this, all the way from locally, all the way up to the president. Everyone got in to see all of the footage and all of the irrefutable evidence. In truth, all it takes is to get a hold of the radar, history, and you'll see that it bears it all out. You could know as much as what I've said without even seeing the videos of the fallout. You see the radar evidence, but you put that together with the actual timestamp cellular videos I have of the fallout and the intentional burning off of shit. You put that together with the radar evidence, the radar imagery, and it there was no reason why there wasn't an investigation, a proper investigation, no, the only reason is that these corporations have control over everyone. Total control. Total control. And at the time that all of this was going down, our nation had so many contracts to support Ukraine, and what all was running on those rails to fulfill those commitments. And you have to keep in mind that the Russia, they saw that disaster. They could see that everything went into Pennsylvania. They could see as well that the whole thing was supplanted in East Palestine, and that our citizens here in Western Pennsylvania were contaminated with all of that shit. They saw all of that. They saw also the will of whoever involved in those contracts, those military contracts to Ukraine, to keep the rails, to get them up and running as fast as possible, no matter what the cost. I want you to think about that, because that's what some people were actually aiming towards. You know what? They were like, you know what? Let's use this to our advantage. We'll show them that we have the will, that even if it means our own citizens being contaminated with all of these carcinogenic industrial chemicals, we'll do what we have to get this through, to give support to Ukraine. And that was really significant, a sign to show we'll do whatever the hell we have to if we are going to go to war with you, even. You know, if we had to fucking take a loss, you know, millions of our citizens, you know, if there was something like that, we're still going to keep fighting. We have the resolve to keep going, no matter what. That's what that was used for, too. It's all true, what I just said. That last part, it has a ring of truth on it, doesn't it? More than, because it's just so significant. But I have not exaggerated anything in this short time here I've left this testimony. I have all of the, even though they have finally decided to terminate my YouTube channel with all of the playlists, you know, I had all of the videos, everything could be gone through to, which it's, you know, I'm surprised that they allowed it to remain up as long as they did. I didn't even get any reason given. I was not even given a reason when they terminated, you know, my account. I wasn't given a reason. They just did it today. What's today's date, Norsiva? The 29th or 30th? Today is the 30th. Today is the 30th. Sunday the 30th of November, 2025. Yeah. They allowed that YouTube channel to be up for, you know, a year and a two and a half years. No, I was surveilled and I was limited, you know, as far as who it was I could send things out to people. And I never thought that anyone would have courage enough to report on this. But yes, some of the crusaders that I see, you know, that are out there, I did share with them what information I could. Did I ever make a point of contact with any of them? You know, I didn't think that they would report on it, because it is such a dark situation. Like, it's so, what are the ramifications of it? What would that mean? What would that mean, Senator? If everything that I said is, you know, which it is true, everything is irrefutably true. But if the public were really to know that, if the world knew that about what it was that these corporations working with our authorities and the media, what they did and got impunity with, what do you think it would mean? What would that mean? That reality. What does that mean? Because, you know, in other places in the world, there isn't the fear. You know, there's an inducement of fear here. Even in every situation, every move, every policy, you know, our citizens are, you know, there's a fear factor. No one wants to speak out, whether it's on the policies, you know, that of supporting the nation state of Israel, where they carry out the atrocities that they have upon those defenseless people in Palestine. Or, you know, sir, the kind of Judge Dredd justice that we see on the open seas right now. Judge Dredd. That's what we're looking at. You know, as far as precedents, you mentioned precedents. Do you really want that kind of precedence here? You know, think about that. Just think about that. The precedence of that we just go ahead and kill. We just go ahead and kill whoever it is that you know, is moving drugs or whatever. You know, let's look at that, because that's what we're talking about with that situation, right? Do we want that here? Because the same thing, the same way that we carry out policy, you know, elsewhere in the world, well, we're really giving the green light to it here. It just hasn't manifested yet. It hasn't, but it is. The precedence, when you carry out something anywhere, you know, you handle things a certain way. Well, you are giving place to that. You know, that it's here. It's not. This is not. You know, a disconnected type of. It's not in another world. It's here. You know, if our authorities carry out those type of I don't know, campaigns, those type of policies, you know, to carry out that kind of justice on the open seas, and without what you have, don't you believe in our principles of, you know, that we should all have a day in court, that we should be given the opportunity to defend ourselves? Isn't that like a fundamental, like what? That sets us apart from so many other tyrannical, you know, authoritarian-based governments around the world. Hasn't that been something that sets us apart? And we're undermining that, undermining all of that. What this nation will look like if we're still around 20 years from now. Whew. Good Lord. So where do we go from here? Every time I say something, does my wife have a spirit, some unclean fucking spirit that is urging her to fucking, you know, make a sound, a yawn, or some other sound, you know, like a you know, like, I don't know, every time I make a point, you know, I hear her in the other room with us sounding off some way. Do you have any spiritual discernment, sir? In Christ, you know, it's a gift of the Holy Spirit to have discernment of spirits. It's a real thing. Even Peter, who Jesus referred to as the rock, meaning his faith was that strong. Jesus would even call him, you know, like a stone. Even Peter, when Jesus said, he said, they're going to arrest me, they're going to torture me. He talked about the suffering he would go through, and Peter said, no, Lord. No, Lord. He said, like, that ain't going to happen. No. And what did Jesus say to Peter, who was the strongest of the apostles? Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. So Peter could be influenced by the devil. What does that say about us? What does that say about us, sir?